Hello everybody and welcome today. I hope that everybody's doing well, all your families are doing well, and just doing what you do in a positive way because we're living in pretty negative times and being positive is very essential. So that's what a lot of us are trying to do, and the results are pretty mixed, but here we are. So, the Forever Purge. What do I think about filming of that sort? What do I think about a plot to a story like that? About such chaos. Such chaos happening right across the border in the United States. Me being in Canada and seeing that actually happen one day would probably be pretty crazy. I would be like, pretty surprised. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised given the way things are nowadays, the way the media is, and the way they present things. I definitely wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened. But at the same time, that would be a pretty unsafe world if something like that was happening. If anything of that was happening. Now, Purge. Never mind the forever part. Let's just say if any sort of purge were to happen like that, or any sort of purge in any way were to happen on a population, that would be considered genocide. And anyone who would commit a purge or make it legal or have to outlaw it eventually, that environment of a purge is, yes, genocide. And no matter the reasons of it, rather it is portrayed as a comical situation, from a movie, or it happens to be reality where that could happen, and to see a movie like that, or a show like that in the past, and then for one in the future for something like the Purge, a forever purge to happen. We've seen a lot of films like that, especially in recent times. Before, films like that were kind of like odd. They're fun to watch, but odd. But today they seem to be making a lot of those purgy kind of films. Films of persecuting, rural people who are predominantly of European descent, and all the chaos that can ensue in their little towns. I remember playing Nazi zombies, and then I remember playing a type of zombies that was like in the 50s. I don't know if you guys played that one. It's like a 50s type of zombie, and there was this map with a 50s diner, and all these people that were coming at you, kind of look like the typical Nazi zombies in the Nazi zombie game, but these were just regular folk this time. These weren't people dressed up in uniforms, or arch enemies from the past, or how you portray it. These people are just regular people dressed up in the old school 1950s, and it's no big deal. People had a lot of fun, played that game. I played it too. When I was playing Nazi zombies, I kind of felt that was a bit kind of racist. If it was like any other like group of people, even though they were enemies or bad or the most evil in the world, it's just portraying real people. But at the same time, it was a fun game. These were the enemies of the countries that fought them, right? And being in Canada, playing Nazi zombies is okay. These were our enemies at a certain point. For whatever reasons, these were our enemies, and we fought against them, and we defeated them in the name of defeating oppression. And then now we play something like Nazi zombies in the future, rubbing the salt on the wound and making sure that that wound never closes, so that we never forget the past. But then the 50s one in the United States is what it's based in. And all those maps and all those things and all those zombies that come at you, you begin to look at them a little bit closer, and it's just regular people. There's no kids involved. There's no kid zombies. There is some kid zombie stuff in it, but there's no kids coming at you with the hordes, right? You're not shooting little kids and stuff like that, luckily. But the game is showing civilians that are the zombies. And when you pay attention to a lot of zombie movies and a lot of these purgy kind of movies, or these contagion type movies where or like these post-apocalyptic, or of our, like what you consider post-apocalyptic, a lot of people seem to think that it's kind of like a normal situation when they watch it. It's comical. But if that were to actually be, one day the post of something, like, that's the life in the future from what it is now. It's like the post-apocalypse of the world we have today, or at least the world of those people in that region where you see that. And when you pay close attention to how it's portrayed, the characters, apart from the Nazi zombie stuff now coming into these just zombies in general, you're seeing that all these zombies are just regular people like me and you, regular people like your parents, your grandparents, people that you know, that you love, but you don't see that, especially when you're a young kid playing it as a game. You've bought this at the store. You probably even went with your dad, and your dad bought this for you, or one of your family members did as a Christmas present or a birthday present, and here you are playing, these games, or watching a movie like this with the family. Some families are very modern age. They don't believe in the kind of morals of the past. They just they just watch whatever entertainment and enjoy it. And why shouldn't you? Why should you be afraid of the things you watch, right? Why should you be so worried about it, especially when you have a safe world, when your laws are good, you got good government, you got good stuff. Our governments are fighting oppression and whatnot. With this whole pandemic, we've been trying to keep safe because our governments are really ensuring that. But then you look closely at kind of like the environment of today, and then these kind of films coming out, and a lot of people in uncertainty. There's a lot of, in today's times, there's a lot of people actually committing suicide right now because of, the current times. There's a lot of people, committing violence. There's a lot of hate crimes, as they call it, or they're making it to be. The way the pot, sort of say, is being stirred to what it is today, and when you look at like the media, it's kind of like watching the beginnings of the Hunger Games, and how they're showing everything, and how society is kind of being segregated and all this, and for safety, for racial equality, for inclusiveness, for new trends and new ideas to be able to take root, and kind of, well, not kind of, as they're kind of saying, as they're actually saying, especially to the kids in school right now, that this is the future, this is the new normal, as they're telling all of us openly. But to our kids in school, they're normalizing a lot of things that in the past perhaps we don't see as normal, and from what I believe and from what the majority of people believe, should not be normalized. And no matter what the background is of the majority of people, no matter what they believe in, what they like, what they entertain themselves with, and again, their beliefs, rather they're Christian, Muslim, or even satanic, they got different kind of beliefs from people that may be dark, even evil, even mean. But even some of the most darkest people in our society, who are just regular people, don't want this for society. It's just their form of entertainment, or for whatever belief, they don't want that. And then there is people that, despite living in a normal world that's supposed to be democratic and peaceful and protective, depending on how you look at it, protective can mean a lot of things. In a world like what we're seeing right now, there is people, quite frankly, and their ideas and their views are catching a lot of fire and a lot of traction. That's pretty bad things. And when you look at things like the forever purge, seeing when it's going to come out, which really kind of like rang a bell to me, and then I began to look at what the plot was, and it was kind of a bit confusing. It explained explaining from a cartel and whatnot, and it seemed to be like a time that this is not just like a random thing in a random weird town. It seems to be like a thing, like the zombie movies, where it's like a nationwide worldwide thing. It's post-apocalyptic, like the Mother movie, where like the robots dealing with all these little clone girls and the world's been destroyed and these people are just, whoever created this system, this AI system or whatever it is running things now, and whatever's left is just a bunch of biological garbage that's trying to regain sense of it, and it's kind of comical when you watch it, but when we really pay attention to it, it's kind of pretty sad. Now, the date of when the Forever Purge is going to be released is on July 2nd, 2 days before July 4th in the United States, which is a very, very significant, it's actually the most significant cultural thing in the United States, because that's the independence of the United States, July 4th. Well, there's actually a pretty big thing to the independence of the United States when you study it and the dates and everything, but July 4th is Independence Day. It's when it's celebrated. And that's what they're going to bring out for the people, for the patriotic spirit. And I understand that in today's times, especially when you see with the media, it's not just today's times because people just are changing and evolving to it in the United States. But they've been talking a lot about, not wanting to represent the flag or being ashamed of the history and everything. And there's been a lot of attacks towards even the culture itself that is the original culture of the United States, or at least what is the dominant, the majority of the United States, which is the red, white, and blue, the whole traditions, Independence Day, everything, the traditions of it. What else do I have to say? And it's not just of it; it's things that are ingrained in the whole country. And of course, I understand there's a lot of people that see that differently. They don't see it the same way as the people who celebrate 4th of July in a very bright and proud way. There's people who look at it in a sense as not a dark day. It shouldn't be a dark day. But what happened since that inception of freedom, that was to colonies that wanted to get away from Britain and fought their revolution, their war, their struggle, dealt with their persecutions. And when they freshly had that, it was a notion of freedom for everybody. But in a sense, when you look at it for what it is, there's a lot of people in the culture that didn't have that. And over time, as we all know, in all countries, in all history, and the United States is no stranger to it, things have changed. Or at least they've tried to change it. It's tried to rapidly change it compared to past nations and empires and societies and cultures of people that took hundreds of years, even thousands of years to change. A lot of change from us basically just coming out of the medieval ages, going into the Renaissance ages, the dark ages, to the Renaissance ages, to the more Renaissance until now we're like we've never been before. At least it seems like that. Because we can't really see that deep into the past. All we can just do is dig up fossils and verbal histories until it began to get written, or at least it seems that way. History, I believe, is very deep, and there's a lot of clues to that, but I'm not going to get into that. A lot has changed. And just to see the way things are becoming now, it's almost going backwards with a lot of cultural shaming, and a lot of what politicians are doing is what politicians have always done, and we're no stranger to it today. And that's another conversation too. But the Forever Purge, July 2nd, so close to July 4th, in times like these, especially with the political situation so boiled up, and such fear, such things, like I said, what's happening with people nowadays, there's a lot of fear and a lot of sadness, a lot of horror at the same time. And looking at these Shudder style films and shows and stuff like that, about the horror and the chaos, and it's so well designed. They put so much effort, so much money, so much commitment into that, in times when people are so desperate. And for me, being a person that doesn't fit into society very well because of just not, I don't know, my brain maybe doesn't work that well. It definitely doesn't work as well as it should. I see that differently. I kind of like see that, and I kind of, look at it very deeply, and I say, hey, this is kind of like weird. This is kind of strange. This is very strange. It's not just kind of. This is very strange. This is very like what is this leading up to, And especially with the current times that we have, with the situations that we have, and being in Canada with the type of government we have right now, the kind of type of situations we have just next door, from what you see in Europe and as well as the Middle East. Oh, the Middle East is really suffering. And then you look over in Latin America, and around the world, Africa, everywhere. But like, this is just next door. And, just to kind of see the way things are disintegrating in the United States, the way Joe Biden is constantly bringing up such horrendous policies that seem to favor certain people, but it's kind of like a trick, because eventually all that's going to have to be paid back. Something's going to have to give. That money's coming from somewhere. The inflation, all that stuff, the kind of character of the governmental structure right now in the United States is very scary. And the kind of enemies right now that the United States has right now, and not just the United States, it's the Western world, right? And in such times, watching such films, such things that our kids learn at school, and we're learning about society, it's almost like we're made to be normalized to this. Well, they talk about, doing things with our land, with our employment, with our businesses, with our lives, with basically our genetics, everything. And what we're dealing with right now. Now, if anyone is like, just has a little bit of common sense, you kind of understand my video a little bit. You kind of see that I'm not just, giving like a rating or a type of review on this movie. I'm just kind of explaining how current times are, and how all these shows and movies are kind of, coinciding with how things are today. The situations we're dealing with today that are pretty horrendous, pretty harsh, and they're pandemics, basically. Where, okay, this is unique. What are we going to do in our community? We got to stop this. We got to do something different. Oh, it's worldwide. It's kind of hard to deal with that. It's worldwide. It's a pandemic. Understandable. So today we got social distancing, 6 feet apart, for our own protection. A lot of what we say now for our own protection is very limited. For our own protection, the way that our firearm laws are, and the way they're becoming now in the United States, because in Canada, but in the United States, the way it's becoming, and then the government and these shows, to me, it's scaring people. Well, people are getting severely disarmed. People are getting severely confused. The future generations are utterly confused. You got people talking about invading the United States all the time. You got people constantly talking about so much hatred, and a lot, from what I hear, is, especially other cultures, always saying the Westerners, the West, the West and the ignorance and what these people see and everything. And as well, being an immigrant, kind of seeing what people in my culture have said, and the tensions that my culture have had with the United States, with English speaking system throughout history. Just everybody has had tension, and we're very familiar with this kind of tension. Like, it's like a French person, a Spanish person, a German person, person of that are neighbors to these cultures. We've been around for a long time, and at the same time, a lot of us, including me, I'm a mixture of different continents, different cultures, where it's kind of hard for me to, attach to something. So that's kind of what I mean by where my head might seem different from other people's. For one, because I definitely have, problems learning. I don't know how else to explain that. You can see it in the way I spell. But like, I also have a cultural issue where I don't just identify as like one particular culture. I'm very multicultural, but at the same time, I speak a language. Actually, I speak nearly 3 languages, but I speak 2 fluent languages. I'm learning a 3rd one. I'm trying to with the best ability that I have. But what I'm trying to tell you is that, like, I just don't sit around and just swallow everything that's being taught to me, or I have a virtue signal where someone says something and I go with it. You know, in the past as a youth, but as I get older, having a family, going on to 3 kids, it's pretty, you know, I got to pay attention to things. I can't just be reckless. I can't just sway wherever the waves take me. I can't just be naive. I got to pay attention. And from what I see today with the way that our media is, it's almost like paying attention and being aware of things is what's broken to them, is people having an independent thought. It seems like it. I guess just to like say it, I think the forever purge is, and a lot of things like that are coming out right now and recently, they're pretty harmful. We talk about a society that is trying to better itself and heal itself, and yet openly shows like that in times like these when everything is absolutely just, can I say censored? Because this video gets censored when you say certain words, keywords, you know, they get picked up. You say things like just words, random words, and your video gets like censored or doesn't get shown, or you can't see it. And they don't really want to say that up front, but they've been trying to say that up front, you know, in interviews, and when they do the creator studio videos, they kind of share that and say, you know, we're trying to curve, you know, bad opinions, and, you know, trying to bring people more to authoritative sources without, you know, people rivaling that. We don't want fake news. We don't want basically different opinions from what is being already shared, from what's already been agreed upon by the people who basically govern us. You know, we don't want any other opinions, and if there is going to be opinions, they're kind of borderline, or you know, they're not really in the spirit of YouTube or social media or the current inclusive society that we have today, that is very uninclusive in many ways, as you can tell, very racist and prejudiced, and but anyways, I don't want to get into that, you know. So for any of you who have enjoyed this video, you know, you're welcome to subscribe. Not very often that I make videos like this. It's been a long time since on this channel in particular I've made really videos, until just the middle of last week. Actually just over the weekend, I made a video, you know, talking about what's happening right now in Canada, and, you know, how the majority of us feel right now in Canada. And from anyone who can watch this and, you know, trying to live a normal life right now can relate to, you know, I just decided to share this and just rant away. But at the same time, you know, just kind of give you some ideas of what our society is, from someone who, you know, who sees things differently, by no choice of my own. I got, like I say, like I have no choice but to see the world differently. I have cultural situations, and at the same time, I have learning situations. So like I can't just learn the same way people do conventionally. I have to like see things. And when you live a life where it's been hard because of that, you have to see things extra. There's certain things that you see better than most people, because where you lack at writing and reading and certain things and certain patterns of learning, you got a very good visual set of what you're seeing, you know, and you begin to work with that. And at the same time, as you're learning, as you're getting better with those things, you know, you begin to put these things together and really see them for what they are. And that's what the majority of adults have done right now in almost every single country that's dealing with all this BS right now, and all this propaganda and all this censorship and all this BS about inflation, all this because economies and power shifts right now, and revolutions that want to come about that are called purges, and getting rid of a zombie society, or racist people, or whatnot, or people that are being targeted wanted to target back, and you know, like, this is the new normal, right? The new peace that we have, that's been coming about for a while, but now they finally have it. Here they are. And now, if I was a person in the United States, you know, despite my history, because I'm a person, I'm telling you, I'm not like Caucasian, like white. I don't just have that. I'm a mixture of people who have been slaves, who have been conquerors, who have been wiped out. You know, remnants of people who have been wiped out, you know, but still, I'm here in the modern age, you know, trying to fit in, do things normally. But my perspective on things and the way I view them is like, it's different from other people. But when I view the way BS is, the way things are today, the way things are leading up to things, and in the way they censor things, don't let you see a different opinion, and then they're trying to educate your kids so badly to accept things that they don't need to accept. And while they're at it saying, hey, you shouldn't have land, you shouldn't, just study communism. Look back into history and really study it for what it is without seeing what these college teachers are telling kids, and even in elementary, telling kids nowadays about, that in Russia there was this Marxist revolution that was getting rid of. They told my little brother this. They tried telling me this, but I was in special programs, too busy dealing with being trained to become one day, I don't know what it was, but I can tell you a whole thing about the education system and, how they separate kids and how they treat people who are at least back in the day, who were different. But I learned differently and I see it differently. And just what I'm trying to tell you is that look at it for yourself, really just look at it a little closer and look at the way our world is today. Look at the way they're teaching our kids stuff. But they taught my brother that, saying that like that at a certain point with like this, for some reason, a lot of young people that go to college tell this story. I guess it's like a common thing when they learn about Marxism, or their teacher just whips it out in the middle of a lecture. Who knows why teachers really like to whip this out in the middle of lectures, but they do. I've had this whipped out on me once or twice in my 32 years of existence. And they say that communism came, it was kind of harsh and this and that, and that for a little while people were put under oppression. Yes, that people who didn't want certain change, didn't accept it, and there was a little bit of war over it. But after a while, that Russia was put on its feet, and it was put into the modern age, and went industrial, all this stuff, and then it ended up, fighting with Hitler and liberating Europe and all this stuff. Like, believe it. But they kind of fail to mention like the tens and millions of people that were basically run through forced labor, who were basically worked to death. They were urinated on, tortured, like mutilated in the worst ways, forced experiments, believe it, what they did to animals, like basically cutting things heads off and filling it up with blood, head transplants, trying to breed animals with humans and stuff like that, and creating weapons and insurgencies and Cold Wars and things like that. And the West fought back. Like I said, we fought against Hitler and all this, because we're righteous. And then afterwards, we did the whole communist thing, this Cold War, where both powers seized power over the world. Sorry, I mean, like, we heroically fought them, and they, in their view, they heroically fought us. But it was a war of espionage where everybody was getting invaded. Everybody was getting their territory invaded in the name of this Cold War, in the name of fighting terrorism and bad stuff, and policing the world and the UN and blah, 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 blah. This is history, guys. If you study it, I'm not describing it in a particular way where it's so detailed with finesse, or I'm trying to spread fake news. I'm just basically giving you an opinion on history. This is not a history lecture. This is just an opinion on the Purge, on the Forever Purge. But with it, I'm trying to give you a little bit of history, and not just my perspective on history, but the reality of what it was. And this communist revolution, what it did is that, it worked tens of millions of people to the bone, to the death. Were old populations, just basically, whether they were poor workers of the past or liberators or not, all them and their families and their children, everything were put under the whole country was a damn concentration camp, and every country that they invaded was a concentration camp too, all the way up to the fall of the Soviet Union, or whatever you want to call it. But it didn't really fall. It just almost transformed itself. It basically completed its task, gained all its resources, and just pretended to fall. Or sorry, the narrative's not proper, but that's what happened. It didn't fall. Like you, in order to fall, that revolution would have had to be picked apart by a war, by a purge within itself, because that's what communism was a purge on all the old Christian, white ethnic, how we're repeating it today, like the bad people who just pray and go to church and just do regular things and happen to be a specific skin color, and in the name of tyranny and oppression and everything. That's what happened to Russia. It was a purge, and it was a forever purge. It was like that. Just like the guy says, this is a purge. This is a forever purge. That's what happened in Russia. It was a bloody forever purge. And that's what's happening in China right now. It's a bloody forever purge. And that's what happened with the Native Americans. Whether they were in Russia or not, they were not in Russia or China. This is what Native Americans experienced way before Russia and China. A forever purge. In fact, the camps that Hitler designed and communists designed was basically, from what I believe and studied, was based on the designs that Native Americans were put into. And as well, Civil War veterans were put into. Of course, liberating slavery and all this, there's a lot of history to that too, where the Union did not, just liberate the country. They almost just went into the South. The excuse was to liberate slaves and all this and all, but they were just trying to create an empire, and they did. And the atrocities that those men faced, whether they were slave owners or not. In fact, not very many were slave owners, or they were basically slaves themselves in a sense, or just work like they did today. They're just forced out into the United States to spread and create, the world and the Western, the Southern world, and the old political struggle of taking all this land from Mexico, and Spain and all this, and the old French, and getting rid of the English Empire and creating the world army that's going to invade now the world and create this, and then there's going to be a big communistic thing whenever they develop better arms and everything and turn it into what it is today. But that's what it was back then, and that's what communism became. The numbers are pretty high of the people who died. We talk about what Hitler did. Hitler did really bad things to people, to the Jewish population. Being a person who has recently discovered that I got a little bit of Jewish blood, I feel pretty hurt by that. But at the same time, I feel pretty hurt from what happened in general in that war, from so many populations that experienced their own Holocaust. Over and over and over, and people who didn't have that ended, they didn't have a new nation created. And look at Russia. Those people had a forever purge. It was horrible. To this day, Russia still has a secret. Man, there's a reason why those people are pretty tough. There's a reason why there's a lot of hard-nosed shit going on out there. And the jokes that we do and the memes that we do about Russia and how tough they are and how much they know martial arts and how much they make fun of the West and how dumb we are, and the whole funny thing about Russian spies and everything versus, the dumb Westerners that we are here, and as well with China, who's basically put a pretty big point on that. Of how dumb we are in the West, and they even got a thing called the white monkeys out there where people are hired to, you just look it up, white monkeys, but if we did something like that and called them Asian monkeys or something like that, it would be hard, it'd be horrific. It would be so many commercials would be coming out saying that there's just a wave of hate towards, we don't do that. All we do with our media is just make the forever purge and kind of almost make fun of ourselves in the West here, and say that we want to accept every policy and our people accept it and try and don't cause much trouble. But that's what the problem is that when people don't know how to defend themselves, they're getting disarmed, they're getting all this demoralization, they're getting all this horrible sexualization of the youth in the way that it is, and the indoctrination in school, quite honestly. How else do you put it? It leads up to what happened in communist Russia. It leads up to what happened in Germany, and many people don't understand that Germany didn't just blow up like that. Germany had World War I, they were split up, there was a lot of bad stuff that happened there, and they were angry. They did a lot of things that they weren't supposed to, began invading people. Hitler was in that case. But what the people seen was next door in Russia, and how they were taking over basically the whole East and moving in, and causing revolutions and problems and everything. And there's a reason for the tension that happened and why it happened in that way. But obviously, it happened bad, and it should never have happened. None of that should ever have happened. But this is history. This is life. This is no matter how good people try to live here or there, there's always going to be people who are always going to cause trouble. and purges happen. Okay, so a purge is getting rid of unwanted things, undesirable things, but also a purge is just let's call it genocide. Let's call it massacre. Let's call it mass murder. Let's call it racial or whatever you want to call it, depending on the context of it, is a complete massacre, a complete genocide, a complete horrific ending to another people based on other people's greed or a want or a need or whatever it is, or revenge or a vengeance or just hatred. Just, maybe they're part of a cult and they just hate people, or maybe it's like how the Spartans, a lot of people don't understand about the Spartans, but the Spartans had a pretty cruel society. They were the elites. It was like the actual definition of fascism, 100%, and it was a homosexual fascism. So you understand, it was a very deep homosexual fascism. The women in that culture had to be tough because that's the way the men liked it. They liked the tough women. They in fact, their relationships were with the men. They were encouraged with the men. And at the very end, when they were to breed and to continue that fascism, they had to choose women. Or women were chosen for them, or however they did it. It was a pretty stupid process actually, where they would shave the woman, put her in the dark. Or maybe that's a old folks tale in history, but it's history. And what they would do is it would be like let's just say like 10,000 Spartans amongst like 1 million what they would call peasants or whatever they call that. I'm not very familiar with all the terminology, and it's as much as I read or try to read these stories and learn these stories, it's just hard for me to grasp them. But I remember this stuff, and you can study them, right? And you see that like in that society, these people would have a ritual killing of the people who were non-Spartan. It was a purge. It was quite frankly a purge in law, where the Spartan would become, like when you look at 300, what a movie, eh? That's not where I got the beard, by the way. It just grows on my face like every other man. They get beards. Not because of Thor, not because of what I've watched, and it's just on my face, and my kids like it. They tug on it, and I don't have to shave every morning. Is that fair enough? But the Spartans, what they did is that they killed people who weren't Spartan, and that in the 300 where like the kids were released into the wild like animals, and young Leonidas killed the damn wolf and brought the big scary horrific wolf back. It's probably one of those dire wolves that were extinct, brought it back. And, the king, he lived, he survived this dumb ordeal, but in it, they would describe thievery and even killing and everything. That was more than that. The killing was part of the process where almost these Spartans would become men to kill a peasant. It was encouraged. Why? Because it showed the peasants who was boss, and it also kept the peasants' population low. But obviously, they're more than the Spartans, but it kept the fear where the Spartans would keep them from rising up through these interventions of killing them, quite frankly. And the Spartans are pretty brutal amongst their own society, taking everything that was imperfect. And you got to remember, this is not an inclusive society, And when you look at, and it was homosexual, and when you look at, the old societies, where sexuality was prevalent, the Roman Empire, the Greeks, everywhere, there's a lot of violence, a lot of rape, a lot of hurting of people, and a lot of hatred and sacrifice, and then the kind of worship that they did was to gods, but it wasn't just praying and getting rid of people who were doing bad things or you thought were witches. They were praying for the death of other people. They would sacrifice people, sacrifice animals or blood, what they would do with the organs and all that stuff, the rituals, what you consider witchcraft, They would just do these things, and it was their ritual. That was their religion. That was what they did. That was a purge. And when you look at society and the way it is today, it's very similar. The elites, or whatever you call them, the Spartans that are in, the political Spartans, let's just say that. In a sense, it feels like that, and the way you hear a lot of funny memes, or a lot of people, when they make fun of another, when you hear a person complain on the internet and they're like, I don't like this, this is tyranny, and then you get like an account that's like, ha ha ha, this is very funny, you know, you're all sheep, you know, you're all bowing down to your master, you know, you got no rights, you know, yeah, it's pretty bad the way they manipulated us, but we're all like sheep. I've had friends say that, you know, and it's like, it's very ignorant indeed, but you also got to see like, why are people saying that? What kind of people would say that? You know, when there's so many people suffering and hurting, what kind of people would say that to you in response or comment to you? When you got people looking at all these videos of this pandemic and there's like 13 likes to a video now that to like 13,000 dislikes or 1,300 dislikes because people don't agree with what's being said, and then you look at the video and they're saying, you know, everybody agrees to this, everybody likes this, everybody wants this, nobody wants it, everybody in the comment section is, you know. But then you get like these trolls, or what seems like it, that are like, oh yeah, we want this, you know, get it, or do this, or you know, you don't think straight, or you're stupid, like degrading, you know. Who would do that? And then when you look at things like The Purge, when you look at that stuff, when you look at even a movie 2012 where, like, you know, they were genetically perfectly picking all the people that were not really genetically superior, but they were just perfectly rich. They just genetically, I guess, in their minds accepted it, so they were in, and they had a lot of money and they had a lot of power and they helped bring this about. And then you see a lot of people that even did that and were left behind, or they tried to. And it became like this whole social justice where we're saving the world, and now a lot of people were allowed on because this guy said this and that, and, you know, saved the world and whatnot. That's what happened. And they saved the world. And there's this other one called it's like Greenland or Iceland. It's like you know, it's like and then the Mother movie, I believe, I don't know what it was called, but it was like this robot that was like a scary robot that like was dealing with all these cloned people. This little girl who went too far and then discovered that there was like lots of girls like her who try to discover the truth. And, you know, it's, or like the movie Eli, just movies like that are so creepy like that. And like, or even Shutter Island, where like they kind of make fun of people's mental health, and at the same time this guy's significantly mentally challenged, but they kind of tease it. They kind of like, there's no heroicness, it's just like a mind F-U-C-K. It's just like a scrambled egg. It's just, it might taste, smell good, and it is good for you, but it's the context of the scrambled egg. It's not even a scrambled egg. It just looks like a scrambled egg, but it's as disorganized as a scrambled egg, and that's what it is. Just a mind F-U-C-K scrambled egg. That's what they show us, and that's what they're showing our youth. And again, what I was going to come down to about the times that we're in, there was a certain time in the United States, or at least this is what they were saying with criminal psychology and murders, where like in the United States, obviously there was a lot of violence and bad people, but like whenever there was like proper law and order, you know, like a good city, people, you know, didn't need to fight or take over another neighbor's land, like in the Wild Wild West, where like, you know, you look at like the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how horrible that was, and how they treated the men of the Civil War. That's where I got one of the ideas, one of the concentration camps that put these men in. They were called prison camps, and what they would do to them. And it's just, they're just movies, but they're ideas that come from somewhere, come from things that have been seen, that have been portrayed. And now today, you know, long history, we just focus on other things, not focus on what actually was happening in the United States, what was happening in Canada, how the First Nations were being affected, and African Americans, and then how white people themselves, you know, because people got this idea that white people were just horrible, were subjected as well, and were treated the same, and in some contexts as worse. Their obligations, though not as degrading, were in a sense even more degrading in other ways, and worse, because of what you had to agree to being part of the culture, what you'd have to do for the army, the kind of sacrifices, the kind of work you had to do, the kind of things you had to do for your family. And then, of course, the oppression of these cultures and people that didn't have any choice. There's a long history there. And what I'm trying to describe is that the people who lived so graciously and so well off was like 5% of the country. The Spartans, the 10,000 amongst the 1 million. What I'm trying to say is that while they're doing that to their own, they're enslaving others. And basically when they're done with them, the media can just easily say that it's all these people doing it. We just saved the world. We just came in with Lincoln and just started a revolution. The heck did we do? We're just saving the world, right? Like Joe Biden says, with a creepy voice, it's inflation. Pops back up, but goes back down. It's like, are you talking about something else? Because it doesn't seem like that's the way things are being described when it comes to this kind of inflation that's coming, or has already been here for a long time, because people have been dying to this inflation for a very long time. The way, the money and everything, the taxation, the excuses, the way people live, the bylaws, the movies, now the education system, what we're eating, the quality of life, the way people own land, specifically in Canada. There is no land ownership. It all belongs supposedly to the Queen or something, or the Crown or whatever that is. It belongs to them, and we just got 10 years, land 10 years. Whether they're leasehold or some sort of freehold, the biggest tenure you can get, the biggest bone you can be thrown by the Crown is a freehold tenure where you have to be subjected to so much and so much change. And then when the city comes, they just basically say, okay, you're no longer this zone. You can't farm. You can't do this. Oh, you want to keep that? Well, you got to do this. You got to do that. Oh, you just sold your house. Congratulations. Go buy over there, and then you move over there, and then you're too old, you're sick, you're tired, and then they do that to your kids, and then the death taxes and all that stuff. It's like, it's a game, right? Like the Spartans don't have to actively go out there and just massacre people like they did before. Like in a dark alley or in a bush. Now it's really sophisticated. It's basically like worldwide slavery. But it started as experiments, is what it seems like. That's the Forever Purge, guys. That's the movie is or the show or whatever you want to call it. That's just a name. I've been watching the Forever Purge ever since I've been able to understand history. It's there. It's just, people got to get their heads out of their butt and see the way things are today. But they can't. Why? Because they're censoring us. Because the people who do this censor us. They keep us from being able to share. And now they're doing it. They're doing it openly. Basically, really trying to put that mark on our head. We are the peasants and they are the elites. And that we're going to like it. We're going to own nothing, and that we're going to like it. And that whenever these purges come, that they're either law or not law, or the Hunger Games and everything. And despite how creepy or weirdly sexualized the person is, they're like your God, your master, and it's evil. When you look at that, that's quite frankly evil, no matter where you come from, no matter what you believe in, no matter what you have, unless that's what you believe in. I believe, unless you actively say that you believe in doing that to other people. Quite frankly, sadly, my belief, since I don't want to give out fake news here, I believe that is true. There is people that are doing that, and they're the people who manage us. There's good people that manage and things, but the people who truly manage us, what they call the masters, and we're the sheep, those people, they do have those beliefs. And I believe that 100%. You can see it. You don't have to just look at the media and wait for a clue or a bone to be thrown at you. It's right there. There you go, folks. That's my video for today on the Forever Purge. You guys can make your own opinions. They do censor this on YouTube. So what I do is that I put this, on a DVD, and I share it to people who I love, and just talk creative art. Write things. You don't share things on social media unless you feel it's necessary, like a photo of your loved one and a good moment you had on Facebook. But when it comes to really even talking like this, they censor this. They call it borderline or this, or write out, try to get rid of it. Really horrible. And I've experienced it for many years, just trying to make sense of things, understanding things, and this whole excuse of inclusiveness and all this is, for me, I've just, from what I've seen, it's never been there. It's like a trick. And when you see that trick enough, you eventually become immune to it, and then you become used to it. You don't want to hear about it, but it's there, and then now your kids are going to inherit this, and the laws that they're putting in, saying that there's going to be these taxes, these things, these situations, and the way they're going to indoctrinate your kids, and they're going to force this into your bodies, or at least really try to convince you to do it, as they say. You know, they're not trying to impose anything, but they will educate the public, you know, by force. You know, if you guys understand what I'm saying, everybody understands. I don't have to just directly sit here, you know. We're getting censored, we're getting bullied, we're getting indoctrinated, and quite frankly, and we're getting hurt in every way. But we're not allowed to think like that, supposedly, according to the media. Our governments are getting really authoritative with that kind of thinking. Yeah. I think we're at a point in our societies where, you know, we're going to need to do things differently. We're at that point. We've been at that point for a very long time. Anyways, guys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this video. And again, they're going to censor me saying this. God bless you. And keep being who you guys are. Be positive, evolve, change, but, like, you know, you don't have to fit in the kind of things that they're doing with today. You don't have to fit in. You don't have to do that. I believe that you don't have to be like everyone else, specifically when it's coming from the media. They're telling you how to live, how to be, what to do with your body, and who to see and how to think. We know what that is. Anyways, take care, guys.